pretty soon. It's the first live feed of the new year, 2025. It's a new year, so it's time to move forward. So far, I have 197 subscribers, and hopefully, this should be a year where the subscription grows by leaps and bounds, and I have a great subscriptions this year for subscribers. The abundance of subscribers come into play this year in 2025. Let's get into the Life in the Spirit Study Bible. Get into Ecclesiastes Chapter 7. Read about 5 chapters. Chapter 7 to chapter 11. Let's get into it. Chapter 7, verse 1. And it reads, "A good name is better than fine perfume. The day of death better than the day of birth." The day of death, that means the day of a believer's death, is better than the day of his or her birth, for it marks the beginning of a far better life with God. Verse 2 to 6 says, "It's better to go to a house of mourning than go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of every man." But we should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. It's better to heed a wise man's rebuke than listen to the song of fools. Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Let's get into it. Sorrow is better than laughter. Solomon contrasts the sober effects of sorrow and the grief caused by a wise rebuke with the silly laughter and frivolous joking of fools. But those who are reprimanded may feel sad, but such sorrow often results in their repentance. Because they are now confronted with the real issues of life, such sorrow is better than laughter in good times. Verse 8 to verse 14, let's get into it. "The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. But do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions. Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing, benefits those who see the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this, that wisdom preserves the life of its possessor. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what has been made crooked? Who can straighten out what he has made crooked? Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. When times are bad, consider. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, a man cannot discover anything about his future. Consider what God has done in me." Solomon calls for persevering toward God's given goals by accepting the path God provides, whether it seems rough or smooth. By acknowledging that God's at work in us, we can rejoice in prosperity and learn to trust God in adversity. Like the Apostle Paul, we must learn to be content, whether living in plenty or in want. Verse 16, "Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise, or destroy yourself." Do not be over righteous, and neither be over wise, because it means that this verse must be interpreted in the light of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 7. It says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." Those who depend on their own good deeds for salvation and those who imagine themselves to be wise will only destroy themselves. We need true righteousness from God to regenerate our hearts and true wisdom from the Holy Spirit to understand God's word. Thanks to the person that loves the live feed. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Thanks to the Father tuning in. Into verse 20 to 22. "There is not a righteous man on earth who does what is right and never sins. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others." Right? Thanks to the 10 people in the live chat. Thanks for people that just like the video so far. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. "Who does what is right and never sins?" This verse does not contradict God's statement about Job's blamelessness. Rather, it states the truth that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Verse 23 to 28 says, "All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I am determined to be wise. But this is what was beyond me. Whatever wisdom may be is far off, most profound. Who can discover it? So I turned my mind to understand, to investigate, and to search out wisdom, the scheme of things, to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. I've been found more bitter than snare. I've been found more bitter than death. The woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, whose hands are chains. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare." All right, there's 4 people liking the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Look at, says the teacher, this is what I have discovered, adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things. While I was still searching, but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. Determined to be wise, but this was beyond me. Those who seek wisdom by their own efforts and reasoning fail to find it. The hindrance comes from the woman, who is the personification of the seduction of immorality and wickedness. She is the exact opposite of the woman personified as wisdom. In Proverbs chapter 8, verse 1 through 4. Sinners cannot find wisdom because they are ensnared by wickedness. But those who please God by their faith and obedience receive God's wisdom and escape a life of sin. So chapter 8, verse 2. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Obey the king's command means the king here represents human government as instituted by God. Government officials who follow God's principles of living, courage, righteous living. Our Lord wants us to obey the just laws of government. Verse 13. Yet because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. It will not go well with them. In the world, it often seems that the evil triumphs and sinners go unpunished, but yet God assures us that he will eventually punish evildoers according to what they deserve. In verse 17, it reads, that I saw all that God has done. No one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all his efforts to search it out, man cannot discover its meaning. Even if a man claims he knows, he cannot really comprehend it. No one can comprehend. Solomon recognized that no matter how wise we are, we cannot buy our own wisdom. Explain all that God has done, all the ways of his providence. Like Job, we do not have to know all the reasons. We simply need to trust in the Lord, believe that he does all things well. If we are his children, we are in his hands. Chapter 9, verse 2 says, all share a common destiny. The righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifice and those who do not. As it is with the good man, so with the sinner. So as it is with those who take oaths, so with those who are afraid to take them. Let's get into it. All share common destiny means Solomon looks at the inevitability of death from the point of view of this life only. From that standpoint, it does not seem fair that death comes indiscriminately to all, who both the wicked and the righteous. Verse 7, go eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for it is now that God favors what you do. Food with gladness, wine with a joyful heart. So death comes to all in time and chance happen to everyone. We who are pleasing to God should not stop enjoying what he has given us. In the opinion of the student of the Bible, the wine referred to here evidently means the delightfully sweet, freshly squeezed grape juice from the harvest. Verse 10, chapter 9 says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the grave where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. Do it with all your might. It means whatever work we do, we shall undertake it with all our hearts as working for the Lord. Verse 15. Now there lived in that city a man poor but wise. He saved the city by his wisdom. But nobody remembered that poor man. Nobody remembered that poor man. That means in this parable, a little city besieged by a great army seemed in a hopeless situation. But a poor wise man devised a plan and city was saved. Apparently someone else took the credit for saving the city. However, the wise man, probably because he was poor, was forgotten. We should recognize that while they are on earth, justice and fairness will be perfect at best. But in life after death, God will right all the wrongs and reward all righteous deeds. In chapter 10, verse 1, it says, as dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. Dead flies gives perfume a bad smell. Just as dead flies by their decay spoil a batch of perfume, so a little foolishness can counteract the effects of great wisdom. Wise plans can be laid out, but someone who makes a foolish mistake can spoil them all. Chapter 10, verse 8 to 10. Let's get into it. Whoever digs a pit may fall into it. Whoever breaks through a wall may be bitten by a snake. Whoever quarries stones may be injured by them. Whoever splits logs may be endangered by them. If the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill would bring success. Whoever digs a pit, that means wisdom takes into account the risk and difficulties of life. And it's ordinary task. The wise person is kept from harm because he or she knows what could happen and is careful to avoid pitfalls. Verse 16 says, "Woe to you, O Lord, whose king was a servant, whose princes feast in the morning." Whose king was a servant. I mean, it is a sad state of affairs when rulers and leaders are childish, when their princes and their assistants begin the day by satisfying their appetites, probably drinking parties. But how tragic it is throughout history that intoxicating drink has flowed so freely in capital cities of the world. We need godly leaders that set a good example. Chapter 11, verse 1 says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again." Cast your bread upon the waters. The picture here may be that of Egyptians scattering grain under wet water. Flood their lands when the Nile rose every year. It will appear to sink down and be forgotten, but in due time, there will be a harvest. We may apply this to our willingness to be generous and helpful. We must give liberally, since one day we ourselves may be in great need. Verse 4 of chapter 11 says, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." Whoever watches the wind will not plant. It means we are in a world where always waiting for the most favorable conditions will accomplish nothing. Conditions will never be ideal during this present age. We must persevere in prayer and reading our Bibles daily. We must live by God's righteous standards, even if everyone else around us pursues sinful pleasures. We're going to get to personhood. And personhood, that's another feature. Matter of fact, I'm going to finish this whole book, Ecclesiastes, while I'm at it. Go to chapter 12, because there's only 12 chapters in the book. We'll stop there and then get to human personhood, and then be it. Get to Songs of Solomon tomorrow. In verse 9, it says, "Be happy, young man, while you are young. Let your heart give you joy in the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart, whatever your eyes see. But know that for all these things, God will bring you to judgment." For all these things, God will bring you to judgment. Now, God wants his people to rejoice. He wants people to enjoy their youth, but all such rejoicing must be tempered with the recognition that God holds us accountable for our sinful actions. So if we allow our lives to degenerate into superficial levity and the enjoyment of sinful things, the end result will be trouble and suffering in this life. And the judgment in the next. Right, let's get into the final chapter, chapter 12, verse 1 through 7. Complete this whole book of Ecclesiastes. "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light, the moon and the stars grow dark, the clouds return after the rain. So when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men stoop, when the grind cease because they are few, and those looking through the windows grow dim, when the doors to the street are closed, and the sound of grinding fades, when men rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint, when men are afraid of heights and of dangers in the streets, when the almond tree blossoms, when the glorious grasshopper drags himself along, and desire no longer is stirred, then man goes to his eternal home, and ones go about the streets. So remember him before the silver cord is severed, or the golden bowl is broken, for the pitcher is shattered at the spring, or the wheel broken at the well. And the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. All right, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. That means remember in the Bible always implies action. When God remembered Abraham in Genesis chapter 19, verse 29, He became involved in his life for his good. Therefore, remember our Creator means acting in the way He intended us to act when He created us. He's given us life and opportunities that come with youth. We can remember God only by the help of the Holy Spirit as we put on a new self created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. We must do so before death comes. Verses 3 to 7 gives a dramatic picture of the aging process of the physical body leading to death. We can be comforted, however, by the fact that the inner person can still be renewed day by day. Thus returns to the ground, the spirit returns to God. Okay, this verse distinguishes between the aspect of the human person that remains at the time of death and the aspect that returns to God. In verse 8, I'm going to skip that. Verse 11, let's get to verse 11. The words of the wise are like golds. They're collected sayings like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it's good or evil. Now, whole duty of man means, in Hebrew, kol hadam, literally translated is the wholeness of humankind. And occurs in contrast to empty meaninglessness. The book starts with meaninglessness, meaningless. A mere breath, empty, substantial, transitory. What is life is to the person separated from God. That relates to God and His Word. Brings wholeness that makes life worthwhile. I'm just getting to the breakdown. Verse 11, chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes, and 13 and 14 will be done. And get to the human personhood breakdown, the future, like the Spirit State Bible. Words of the wise are like golds, the wise words of truth that come from the wise divine act, sacred act. No one as golds, pointed sticks, to prod us on in the right way, as nails to secure the truth in our minds. God's word, therefore, is far more valuable than all the many books of human wisdom. So fear God and keep His commandments. Fear God and keep His commandments. The entire book of Ecclesiastes must be understood in light of his concluding verse. Solomon began with a cynical appraisal of life as meaningless, but he ends with serious counsel about where meaning can be found. Fear of God, love for Him and His word, and obedience to His commandments bring purpose and satisfaction that cannot be found in any other way. That's what it's about. You gotta fear God. That means have a reverence, deep love for God, love for Him and His word, and obedience to His commandments. That's the purpose right there. That's the purpose. That's all you need. That's the conclusion of the whole situation, is that as long as you have a fear of God in you, a love for Him and His word, and obedience to His commands, that's the true purpose of the highest order and satisfaction. Okay, God will bring every deed into judgment. It means that as a final word, Solomon reminds us of a solemn and enduring truth. We are fully accountable to God for our deeds. The Lord will evaluate each of us, believer and unbeliever alike. He will judge all our deeds, whether they are good or evil. We will not be justified on the judgment day if we have neglected or rejected God's grace. But let's get to the human personhood. It's not the cover with this. Human personhood, let's get into it. Of all the creatures God made, humankind is by far the highest and most complex. Because of pride. However, humans often forgot that God is their creator, and that they are created beings, and that they are dependent on God. This article examines the biblical perspective on human personhood. Number one, human personhood in the image of God. Number one, the Bible states explicitly that we are, as humans, were created by God in His image and in His likeness. Clearly, Adam and Eve were not products of evolution. Because Adam and Eve were created in God's likeness, they were able to experience and respond to God's fellowship, love, and glory and holiness. Note at least three different aspects of the image of God in humankind. Number one, Adam and Eve possessed a moral likeness to God, and that they were righteous and holy. Their hearts capable of loving and of wanting to do what is right. They possess a likeness to God in intelligence, for they were created with spirit, mind, emotions, and power of choice. In some sense, their physical makeup was in God's image in a way not true of animals. God gave to human beings the image in which he was to appear visibly in the Old Testament, in the form that his son will one day assume. And Adam and Eve sinned this image of God and then was seriously marred, but not totally destroyed. Certainly their moral likeness to God was corrupted when they sinned, so that they were no longer perfect and holy, but now had a tendency towards sin, as they passed on to their children. The New Testament confirms the corruption of God's image when it says that redeemed believers must be renewed to the original moral likeness of God. At the same time, simple humans still have the aspects of the likeness of God and intelligence with the capacity for fellowship and communication with Him. This dimension of the image of God was also marked, but not totally obliterated when Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden. So that's about the human personhood and the image of God. Now we're going to talk about the components of human personhood. Components of human personhood. The Bible reveals that human personhood made in God's image in the triunity, involving the components of spirit and soul and body. God formed Adam out of the dust of the ground, body. Breath breathed into his nostrils, and his breath was like spirit. He became a living being, a soul. So God intended that by eating from the tree of life, by obeying his command not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, humankind would never die, but live forever. Only after death entered the world, as a result of human sin, do we read about a sweet separation whereby a person returns to the dust of the ground and the spirit returns to God. In other words, the separation of the body from the spirit and soul, death is the consequence of sin in the human race, and will eventually be remedied only by the resurrection of the body on the last day. Next, we're going to get into the soul, the Hebrew nephesh, Greek psyche, often translated life, may be briefly defined as the non-material aspects of mind, emotions, and will in human personhood that result from the union of spirit and body. The soul, along with the human spirit, will continue to live when an individual physically dies. So the soul is so closely linked with one person's inner personhood that it is sometimes used as a synonym for person. The body, in Hebrew basar, Greek soma, may briefly define as that material element in an individual, sometimes called flesh, that returns to the dust when he or she dies. So the spirit, in Hebrew ruach, Greek pneuma, may be briefly defined as a non-material life component of the human being, wherein resides our spiritual capacity and conscience, and by which we have the most direct contact with God's spirit. Of the three components constituting the whole of human personhood, only the spirit and the soul are destructible and survive death, either to live in heaven or in hell. So the Bible insists that in this life, we are stewards of their bodies and must keep free from immorality and evil and dedicate them to the service of God. The body itself will also experience transformation on the day of resurrection. So that human personhood is totally redeemed in the end for those who are in Christ Jesus. Now here are the responsibilities of human personhood. When God created us in his image and likeness, he entrusted us with several responsibilities. Number one, God made us this way so that he can develop a loving personal relationship with us for all eternity. In this way, we will glorify him as Lord. So much did God desire a people to enjoy him, glorify him, and live in righteousness and holiness before him. Then when Satan succeeded in tempting Adam and Eve to rebel against and disobey God, the Lord promised to send a Savior to redeem the world. Thank God for Jesus. It was God's will that human beings love him above all and love their neighbors as themselves. This twofold command of love summarizes God's entire law. But God also established the institution of marriage in Garden of Eden as a covenant of love, intending that marriage should be monogamous, a lifelong relationship between one husband and wife. Within the context of marriage, God commanded that the human race be fruitful and increase in number. Man and woman were to reproduce godly offspring in a family context. God considers a godly family and raising up children within healthy family relationships as a high priority in the world. God also charged humankind to subdue the earth and to rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Already in the Garden of Eden, Adam was given the responsibility of taking care of the garden and of naming the animals. Note that when Adam and Eve sinned by eating the forbidden fruit, some of their dominion over the world was lost to Satan, was now as the God of this age, controlling this person's evil age. But God still expects believers to fulfill his divine purpose by taking good care of his world, by consecrating all things in the earth to him, and by managing his creation in a God-glorifying way. Because of sin's presence in the world, God sent his son Jesus to redeem the world. The awesome task of bringing that message of God's redemptive love has been given to God's people, whom he has called to be witnesses of Christ and his salvation to the ends of the earth, to be the light of the world and the salt of the earth. Right, so I'm done. I'll be in Song of Solomon tomorrow. This is like a romantic kind of book. It has nothing to do with me in terms of marriage. It's all stuff. There's ways I read it. So many chapters on it. Song of Solomon. I don't even get into this book that much. Song of Solomon. 8 chapters, so I get into it. Right, so that's it, man. I'm done. All the songs. Let's get into the Rickey Henderson book. In chapter 7, being chapter 7 and 8, the 2 chapters will be done for the day. This is Rickey, The Life and Legend of the American Original by Rickey Henderson. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Chapter 7. The A's defense of their 1981 American League West title lasted a grand total of 1 day into the new season. On opening day, April 6, 1982, 51,513 in the House saw the A's beat California 3-2 in 11 innings. A victory that allowed Billy to continue to taunt the Angels after saying that the A's will finish ahead of the Angels in 1980 when taking the division in 1981 and going to the ALCS. Billy had challenged them to a fist fight in spring training. Billy immediately boasted that the 1982 A's were going to lead the Angels in the dust again. They were going to the World Series, he said. Now he got in the Angels again in the first game of the season. Taunting the Angels anew was an especially delicious process for Billy, considering that Jimmy Autry's shiny new free agent acquisition was none other than Billy's sworn enemy, the great Reggie Jackson himself, signed away from the Yankees. As it turned out, though, the 1982 A's would see the World Series only if they were watching on TV. At no point did the A's hold sole possession of first place. Nor did they ever seriously threaten for the division. The A's did not post a winning record over any calendar month in 1982. They lost 94 games, the worst team ever for a Billy managed club, finishing 25 games out of the money. Worst of all for Billy, when the champagne flowed, it was none other than Reggie and the Angels popping the corks, celebrating the American League West title right in Billy's face. The A's crashed to earth, yet for the entirety of the 1982 season, Oakland led the evening news and was on the sports front of newspapers across the country for one reason, Rickey. Rickey had one objective in mind for 1982, to break Lou Brock's all-time single-season stolen base record of 118 steals. He already owned the American League record. The number he wanted was 120. 120 had a nice ring to it, round, distant, impossible. From Rickey's point of view, it was only right that he would own the all-time single-season record. In his first full season, he had knocked Cobb from the top spot of the American League stolen base list. The strike was the only reason Rickey felt that he didn't beat Brock in 1981. Big people held the big records, and Rickey came to the majors with the potential of being big, the best base stealer ever. Now with the strike behind them, there was nothing standing in the way of Rickey beating Brock, so he thought. In fact, there was one major obstacle standing between Rickey and his goals. Billy said this to the newspaperman, to the local beat writers and Glen Sports of the San Francisco Examiner, and Kit Stilio of the Sire of the Oakland Tribune. He said it to the local columnists like Art Spander of the Examiner. He said to national guys, Bill Cowan in Philadelphia and Peter Gams in Boston. There are no green lights on this team. Over the previous 2 years, Rickey had been circumventing Billy's directors by just playing dumb, doing on his own, under the philosophy that it was better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. In the later retellings, Rickey would call a typical exchange with Billy. When I went out there, he let me steal, but never gave me the green light. I knew I could steal. I knew I could take the base. I went out there. They used to give me signs. I used to miss the signs and steal anyhow. He used to pull me into the office and say, "Do you know the signs?" "Yes, I think I know the signs." "Did you get the steal signs yesterday?" I thought he gave me the steal sign. He said, "No, they wouldn't give you the steal sign. I'm going to tell you when you go, where you can go." Then he said, "If you're going to steal like that without getting the steal sign, well, you better make it every time." I said, "You ain't got to worry about that." And I stole out of fear, too. Got to make it every time. Stole about 10 in a row once. Strained by Billy, Rickey felt that with more freedom, he'd be making more money. So with Eisenhart sent Rickey's contract for 1982, which called for him to be paid $350,000, a figure slightly less than the double the $185,000 Rickey earned in 1981. Rickey sent it back. He wanted a long-term contract. Eisenhart had signed turning Armours to a 4-year, $3.3 million deal, but Armours was 5 years older than Rickey. The A's were firm in their policy, 1-year contracts only for young players. The A's also offered Dwayne Murphy $350,000, the same offer they made for Rickey. Usually, Eisenhart said, "We think in terms of a multi-year deal, when a player is at or near his peak." The alternative for both players, if they did not want to sign the A's figure, was salary arbitration. Underrated but critically important measure that Marvin Miller, the Players Association, gained in 1976. Salary arbitration, which first became available to third-year players. A player chose the figure he believed he was worth. The team counted with this offer, and an independent arbiter decided which figure it would be. Murphy did not want the grief that came from salary arbitration, nor did he want to risk bad blood with the A's if he beat them, or in his hard feelings if he didn't. Money could drive a wedge between a player and a team, so Murphy accepted the A's 1-year offer of $350,000, philosophical about it. "There's always next year," Murphy said, alluding to a potential multi-year contract. Rickey took a different route. The A's won $350,000, but what Rickey wanted was $535,000. For the first time in his career, Rickey and the A's would be locked in a salary dispute. Sandy Alderson, the former Marine Ivy League lawyer hired by Eisenhart when the highest-paying bought the club from Charlie Finley, handled the A's arbitration cases. Alderson presented his case. He wound up looking like one of the dozens of helpless captures victimized by Rickey on the base paths. Rickey won his case, and now his earnings had nearly quadrupled. He received a letter from Eisenhart which read, "Congratulations, I expect you to buy me dinner." The old guard, which had forced the strike over controlling player movement and money, fumed at Eisenhart's amiability. Rickey had his money. Rickey had his goals. He knew where he wanted to go. But what he didn't want to have was the pathway to get there, not with Billy in the way. In the spring, Billy told the Riders that everything was going according to plan, that Rickey should be able to steal around 100 bases. That frosted Rickey even more. 100 wasn't a big enough number. Rickey wanted 120. One day, near the end of camp, Rickey was sitting in the dugout, and Billy sidled over to him and said, "We're going to break the record." I said, "What do you mean? I got to go out there and do it. We're going to break the record?" Rickey recalled, and he said, "That's right, I said, "How are you going to help me break the record?" He said, "I'm a pitcher's manager. I know pitchers. I know when they're going to throw a breaking ball, and all I want you to do when I feel they're going to throw you a breaking ball is to take off running." I'm like, "What?" So now I'm on base and I'm gone. So what occurred over the summer of 1982 was a complete total obliteration of a highly respected record. Fueled by Rickey's obsession with greatness, as far as he saw it, the record was his. After 32 games, Rickey had stolen 35 bases in the first 50 games of the season. Rickey had stolen 49. By late May, Rickey had not only made good on his offer, but pushed his chips, not freebies from the house, but his own personal stats across the table. Earlier in the month, Billy told the Bryce, "I'm going to make it a priority to see that Rickey breaks the record." But in the first half of the season, Rickey met every benchmark he saw as prior to breaking the record. His warm start didn't discourage him into thinking his pace was slow in the second half. He wasn't just stealing bases for the purpose of swiping the bag. He was trying to score runs too. The truth was that Rickey had charted a course toward the record when he was still in the mid-90s. By the time 1982 arrived, in just his third full season, Rickey already knew there was no one in the sport who could run with him. His goal was averaging stolen base per game. He was ahead of the pace. When he stole twice off Rich Getman in Boston on June 1st, he had stolen 50 bases faster than any player had ever done it in only 50 games. When Brock broke Murray Will's record in 1974, still number 50 had come in his 69th game. The American League was receiving the full Rickey offensive experience. A hitter with a good eye for the strike zone would generate enough walks to have base percentage roughly 60 to 70 points higher than his batting average. At one point in April, Rickey's on-base percentage was 200 points higher than his batting average. In the third game of the season, the Angels walked Rickey 5 times. At the end of the month, Rickey was in a slump, hitting just 228, but his on-base percentage was 445. There were the kind of walk numbers the power hitters put up because of pitchers' abject fear of them moving one that would create far more damage than just base on balls. Pitchers were walking Rickey as if he were Reggie. And even though he didn't hit his second home run until May 18th, after one game against the Angels, when Rickey went wild, 3 for 4, 3 runs scored, a walk, a double, a homer, 2 stolen bases, including a straight steal home, the only straight steal home of his career. Reggie Jackson was on the field that day, said, "Rickey is probably the most feared offensive force in the game. I was leading the league in homers, but I feared him more than me. With him, if he gets on base, it's a triple. Lou Brock, Billy North, Campaneris for a double. This guy's a triple. I wish I could be around him every day. I keep him pumped up for every game." By mid-June, Rickey had 7 games of 3 or more walks, 16 games of 2 or more stolen bases, leading the league in walks, stolen bases, runs, and on-base percentage. He was an offensive machine without hitting the ball over the fence. As Rickey Henderson dashed to 175 stolen bases, 200 walk pace, it's nice to see him give credit to his manager, whether he is allowed to run on his own or not. I'm lucky to be playing for Billy Martin. The aggressiveness I have is the aggressiveness Billy has. I'm told Billy played the way I do. He just didn't have my speed. Between his style and my speed, we can make things happen. Now everyone was getting blank. For 30 years, Billy had been getting under everyone's skin, and now his prized disciple was continuing the tradition. Opposing managers complained to the umpires that the crotch gave Rickey an unfair strike zone. The pitchers complained too, but they had been complaining about the crouch since Rickey was in the minors. The difference was that nobody thought Rickey would hit big league pitching well enough and be enough of a threat for his quirky batting style to be much of an issue. Even Jen Gwynn, one of Rickey's biggest advocates, was always skeptical that Rickey could be a successful hitter in the big leagues hitting from such an exaggerated crouch. For his sporting news column, Gammons consulted Dennis Exley, who said, "The thing that drives pitchers nutty is like the A's, Rickey Henderson is his strike zone. What irks them is that Henderson records so that he has a totally different strike zone at the point that he hits. Two guys who knew the Tigers, Jack Morris and Eversley, thought that while Mickey's minuscule strike zone gave him an advantage, the real advantage to the Crouch was that forced pitch to throw directly into his power. Skip around a little bit. The captains were complaining about Rickey, but what they were really blanked about was Rickey's style, which made them look bad. And making them look bad was part of that what made him look good. As he swiped second and third with impunity, with that Oakland combination of flash and style, they wanted to punch him in the mouth. There was a foolishness to Rickey on the base pass and single-mindedness in the pursuit of the record. Professional qualities that might have been universally admired if they'd been wrapped in a different package. The guys in the other dugout were, of course, in awe of Rickey's skill. But that didn't mean they loved how he approached his business. Baseball is the one sport because the defense has the ball, in which the opposition has the power to police the game. Step out of line, expect a fastball in the back. Step out of line, by violating the codes of the sport, even the teammates can't always be expected to mount a robust defense. Nevertheless, for every salty catcher upset that Rickey had won yet another duel, Rickey was the player the fans couldn't take their eyes off of at home or away, no matter what the score. In Texas, the All-Star catcher Jim Sundberg couldn't stand Rickey. When Rickey's style was in full flight, Sundberg's teammates egged him on in the dugout like eighth graders. The Rangers players employed Sundberg to order a knockdown pitch or just bide his time, waiting for Rickey to slide into home, and then pow, Sundberg could nail him once and for all. Those were delicious revenge moments for the all-grunt, no-glory catchers. A chance to send a little payback. Stolen bases looked glamorous, especially when the syndicated weekly show This Week in Baseball showed the speed guys running around in the dirt, cutouts of the astroturf, but stealing was hard hat grunt work too. Rickey would take a lead, then dive back to the bag. A sweaty first baseman would slap some letter on him with a tag. Again, then again, Rickey would often get wrapped 3 or 4 times with the glove before even attempting to steal anything to slow him down. First baseman would just delight in beating the blank out of him. And the catchers, they couldn't wait for a blazer to come around third, and if there was a play at the plate, Lee Mazzilli, remember the great Pirates catcher Manny Sanguilin, attacking the base runner and then just leaning his entire body on him. July 2nd, 1982, Oakland Sundberg got his chance. The knuckleballer Charlie Hall was spinning the gym with 2-hit, 2-walk shutout so far. And the game was a laugh for 7-9 Rangers, so Rickey already had a stolen base in the game, 74th on the season. At the bottom of the ninth, Rickey led off with a walk, advanced to second on Darlene Murphy's ground out. Then he took off for third, swiped it for the 75th starter of the year. Sundberg couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. It's Billy Sample, who played center field that night. We called the Rangers sharing a collective sentiment. Rickey was about Rickey. Well, he wasn't called. I think he meant anything by it. I just don't think Rickey knew any better. He was on his plan. A lot of us, like Sonny, we were from the old school, and you just didn't do that. You stole base to win ball games. Rickey stole base to break records. There was one guy in the game, however, who happily accepted Rickey as an ultimate challenge. That was Bob Boone, the Angels catcher. Boone was part of a baseball family that dated back into the 1940s. His father, Ray Boone, was 2-time All-Star over a 12-year career. Remember the 1948 Cleveland Indians? The last year that team won the World Series. Bob Boone would win a World Series with the 1980 Phillies, and his sons Aaron and Brett will also play in the big leagues. Rickey had his way with everyone in the game, but not with Bob Boone. Rickey was still off the rest of the league, at least nearly 80%. Boone nailed him half the time. That was unheard of. Boone was a catcher's catcher, cerebral, attentive, stubborn. He quickly became Rickey's nemesis. The many components of Rickey's style was also increased the annoyance of caution. The first was just getting the at-bat started. Rickey took 10 years to step into the batter's box. For somebody so fast, nobody walked that slow. Mike Hargrove of the Indians took his sweet time once he was in the box, but nobody took some more time than Rickey does to get there. Second was the ticks. Rickey would tap his bat a few times, chip at the dirt and spikes, finally create a running dialogue on every pitch. Then there was that time Rickey was just having a little fun, or his catcher, Rick Dempsey, had taken a walk out to talk to his pitcher on the grass just in front of the mound, only to see Rickey standing there listening, and Dempsey, who wasn't in the mood for that blank, turned around and let Rickey have it. It only took an umpire and a couple of coaches to get between Rickey and Dempsey. The answer was getting the attention, but the numbers were immutable. He stole 94 bases in 99 games. Rickey stole his 100th base on August 2nd off of Rick Sweet in Seattle. So out of here. So I'm gonna do chapter 8 anyway. So I'm gonna skip around a little bit. I always do. I'm gonna try to cover everything. It's interesting stuff. So let's go to this paragraph says Rickey was named by Sports Illustrated the biggest hot dog in the American League. There isn't enough much to put on that hot dog, the Red Sox pitcher Dennis actually told Peter Gammons. Of course, ironically, this was the same Exley never lacking for style himself, would strike out a batter and point at his vanquished foe. The moment finally came on August 27, 1982, in Milwaukee. Rickey took the record with a flourish of 4-steal night that set him apart, so it put him at 122 stolen bases. It was a Rickey night, full of Rickey runs. He didn't even get a hit. 3 walks led to his 4 stolen bases and 2 runs scored. He didn't just break the record, he shattered it. Jim Gensler, the Brewers' second baseman, shook Rickey's hand. They stopped the game. Brock was dead, not just because he was one of the great gentlemen in the game, because the ace had called and asked him to attend. Rickey was gracious, saying it was a joy to be in Brock's company. He thanked Dwayne Winfrey for giving up pitches to give him a chance to steal. Aside Ganter, Naria Brewer offered Rickey's congratulations. Milwaukee would win the American League pennant in 1982 that year. And their post-game comments reflected their exasperation with Rickey as they sent a message to the A's and their star left fielder. Rickey may have stolen a ton of bases from last place, but Milwaukee had won the first 2 games of the series. We weren't thinking about Rickey Henderson, Harvey Kuhn, manager of Milwaukee, said. We treated Rickey as if he had no stolen bases. The Brewers' strongest shortstop, Robin Yount, parroted his manager almost word for word. We didn't care about Rickey Henderson, we cared about winning. Rickey had the record. Reached his magic number 120 steals, then some. So 122 bases, 127 games, no less. Gave him an idea for another number, 140. Billy was into this idea too. 140 was huge. Nobody ever wrote that would ever break that number until Rickey jammed his shoulder, sliding to second base a couple days later. He stole only 8 more bases for the rest of the year. Nevertheless, Brock's record was already his. The final tally was 130. To commemorate the achievement, Rickey bought a gold chain with a gold medallion the size of a sundial. Etched into the center of the gold disc was the number 130. He'd wear that chain for the rest of his career. With Billy, Rickey had what any player could ever want from a manager, complete devotion to his development. Billy saw Rickey's ability to, in a way no manager had seen since Boise, when Tom Troublehorn spent more time on Rickey's game than he did with his own wife, and he had traveled light years from John Kennedy in Jersey City. Few players possessed the tools required to be a Billy Martin type of player. But Rickey did. His game was perfect for what Billy wanted. Of course, it didn't really matter who the manager was when Rickey was cranking, as long as they got out of his way, let him play. Billy wanted Rickey not to be great, but to be an all-time great. Rickey was Billy's spear of lightning, the player he could see himself through, the one who would implement his managing vision. In return, Billy played favorites with Rickey as he did with a few other players. The problem was that Billy's pattern as a manager had followed him to Oakland. The best Billy years were always the first 2. Rickey was great, but the team collapsed, and the House family had grown completely tired of Billy's act. So there was an unwritten rule in the A's front office. Billy could never be left alone. The club always had to attach someone to him. He was too unpredictable. A little bit. Billy Ball was over, but Rickey was still the guy the fans paid to see, the one they couldn't take their eyes off him. Even playing for a team that was barely winning once a week, Billy was gone. But Rickey still was electric. What people don't really seem to get, and I don't know why they don't get it, shooting day that it we call. And I don't. It's that Rickey didn't need Billy, but Billy definitely needed Rickey. The A's offered Rickey $750,000 for 1983, but did not fight when Rickey asked for $800,000. Another jump from the $535,000 he earned in 1982. This time, the two sides agreed to the contract cleanly, so there was no contract fight, the management, no arbitration, no bitterness. After breaking the stolen base record, Rickey was now a star. As the face of Mizuno, he was now doing ads and commercials with other stars from other sports. As his fame increased, so too did his exposure to uncomfortable situations. Reading was still a challenge for him. The rumors went out that when Rickey did a TV spot or ad shoot, he would refuse to use a script, saying he was more comfortable improvising. But his true fear was revealing his reading difficulties. The record also solidified Rickey's reputation as the most flamboyant, stylistic player in the game. But that didn't mean Mizuno was comfortable with him. Jim Darby saw Rickey as an enigma, whose moves could have changed as quickly as he could accelerate for a second, especially if he felt taken advantage of. Signing the deal with Rickey didn't mean Rickey will show up in your product. That was always scary, Darby recalled. The contract didn't always mean to Rickey what we think a contract means. You just never knew if one day he was going to show up in a pair of Adidas. The people who knew Rickey knew he had to win. Winning was central to his core, but in the big leagues, he's primarily seen as a hot dog, as arrogant, showy, exaggerated. His grade school friend, Dave Stewart, saw Rickey as the same person he always been. But big leagues was supposed to be humbler. Rickey has been styling since we were kids, but the audience changed, so the people who were doing the writing changed. The people who were shaping the opinions changed. To us, he was just Rick. To them, he was challenging the conventions of how the game was played. To them, he was being disrespectful to traditions, to how you were expected to play. So Rickey was the showstopper, someone who could dominate the tempo and pace of the game. Even though the writers didn't always see him that way, Rickey was the player everyone was watching. Both the home fans waiting to be electrified by something Rickey did, and the opposition. What I love about him, Reggie Jackson said, was his love of the moment. Everyone in the world knew he was going. The manager, the pitcher, the catcher, he went away anyway, and they still couldn't stop him. There were so many ways to captivate the crowd. Rickey was all legs and thrust and ferocity. He was a walking demand. Batting leadoff, a position in order that was supposed to be a largely inconspicuous, the table setter, for bigger things to happen, he demanded to be recognized. His play wasn't effortless. He never been mistaken for a later day DiMaggio. His legendary demeanor was all about art, class, and ease. That baseball came easy to DiMaggio was, of course, only legend, but that legend was shaped not just to provide color and character to his otherworldly deeds, but also to serve the Italian immigrant population who basked in his success. His expensive tailored suits, his professionalism, lifted ordinary Italians trying to make it in America, giving them a sheen of dignity they were not often afforded in everyday life. In a country that often treated them as beneath contempt, DiMaggio's athletic elegance contributed to making Italians feel respectable. Still, DiMaggio's game was in fact exceptionally smooth. Once he go out there, he stayed out there. He did everything so easily. That's why they never appreciated him as much as they should. You never saw him make a great catch. You never saw him fall down or go down for a ball. He didn't have to. He just knew where the ball was hit. He went and got it. That's what you're supposed to do. The idea is to catch the ball. If DiMaggio clean and sound caught the ball fundamentally without frills, what in the world would old Marshall Joe have done with Rickey, for whom the idea was to do both, to catch the ball and let them talk about the way he caught it? Of course, or worse, would have happened to him and his teammates if McCarthy had been managing in the opposing dugout while Rickey made a spectacle out of a simple fly ball. In McCarthy's day, when even scratching out a little dirt in the box was seen as a sign of disrespect, the side of Rickey moving slow as a molasses to the box, carrying out a ceremony of lucharos, getting every call would undoubtedly have warranted a fastball to the ribs. Somebody would have gone down, right on, led blank. Naturally, the world will never know for sure. For McCarthy, last manager a big league game in 1950. For McCarthy, last managed a big league game in 1950 and died 18 months before Rickey made his major league debut. If Rickey was born with style, the fans and the writers were calling to call him a hot dog, well, he was going to lean into that role. But the truth was that he was always resented the implication that he valued style above winning. Rickey valued his style as a spoiler of winning. The black fans and players knew that pitting charisma against winning was a false, often racist choice, a way to punish the black players for playing with black style. More than any other sport, baseball demanded that black and brown players adapt to the old ways of playing the game, which was to say, the white ways. Crack a smile, get knocked out. Penalizing black style was the clearest way the game reminded post-segregation black players this who it was professional baseball belonged to. Black players could now take the field, but they were renters. If the baseball world was going to call Rickey a showboat, well, they were going to get a show whenever they bought a ticket. It was a new world, made for television, a game of pictures and images, not the words and the ink of McCarthy and the Joe D's time. In 1983, Rickey gave them a new show when he added another 24-karat gold piece of flash to his game that no one watching him would ever forget. Surely the legend wasn't true that Rickey introduced his patented snatch catch during a no-hitter, and yet it was. It was also true that Rickey didn't remember the name of the pitcher who threw it, even though they were teammates. But he was certain the snatch catch started there. It started off in Oakland just trying to be like Willie Mays. What was the pitcher's name? He pitched a no-hitter for us. Rickey recalled. Last out of the no-hitter, I snatched the ball out of the air, and he gave everybody in the stands a heart attack. There's a lot of people today trying to make something fun, trying to create fun. But it ain't natural. It wasn't nothing I created. I just had style. The legend was indeed fact. September 29, 1983, in Game 159, A's White Sox at the Coliseum, the A's were done, no longer in the running, 24 games out at first pitch. The White Sox playing out the string were very much in it. The White Sox and the young manager, Tony La Russa, were heading to the playoffs. Chicago hadn't made the postseason since Rickey was in diapers, living in Chicago when the Go-Go Sox won the 1959 American League pennant. 1983 team was a beast. Chicago would win the division by 20 games. The only team in the American League West with a winning record. The pitcher whose name Rickey couldn't remember was Mike Warren, all of 22 years old, rookie making his ninth start in the big leagues. Wearing number 43, Warren took the mound against Britt Burns, the White Sox left-hander. Warren erased two future Hall of Famers in the first inning, striking out Carlton Fisk, retiring Harold Baines on a flyout. Rickey immediately gave the A's the lead, singling and scoring at the bottom of the first. Warren walked two, lost his perfect game, but he hadn't given up a hit. Fisk threw Rickey out, trying to steal in the third. By the eighth, the A's led 3-0. Rickey made 5 routine putouts, the Maggio style. 2 hands on the ball in his patented shallow position. Nothing fancy. Catch the ball to whittle back. A Warren, a Southern California kid with blonde hair, falling out of his cap into the ninth with his no-hitter. Jerry Heston, the veteran utility man, led off the inning with the walk. Greg Walker, a Bay Area kid, lefty power hitter, flied out to the center for the first out. Speedster Rudy Law, another Bay Area kid from up the road in Richmond, was next. It was the same Rudy Law who pulled out of the race Rickey was supposed to run against Law and Clabber, the quarter horse of Finley's Man vs. Beast extravaganza in Modesto, when Law, a prospect for the Dodgers, with Lodi back in 1977, Warren struck out Law. That left Fitz 2 hours and 20 minutes after the first pitch with nothing but zeros on the board. When Warren flipped a needy breaking ball low and over the plate, Fitz looking fastball lunged and popped up to the left. Rickey trapped the ball, made a little semicircle underneath it, and he secured the final out of the greatest moment of Mike Warren's professional life. Rickey snatched the ball out of the air and swung his glove down to his side in one crescent-shaped motion, slapping his right hip with his glove. So it was technically true that Rickey introduced the snatch catch during a no-hitter. But the truth was even more outrageous. After making 5 putouts, Rickey unveiled the snatch catch, the showiest of show-off moves on the final out. That's where it started. I was so used to it, I kept it. Most people think I was snatching it out of the air, but I caught it first. You think I was going to risk that? They used to go. If you throw it away, we're going to be talking about your blank all day. You got to understand, I can't be the guy saying all this trash and then miss the ball. Ball was coming at the end at me. I'm waiting for it. Bam, I'm catching it. But if I gotta go get it, make sure you catch it first. And then bam, bam, slap it off the hip to make sure it was in my glove. And it looked so good. That was my flavor. It was optical illusion. Really, or at least the drama of it was. I never swatted at the ball while trying to catch it. Snapped it after I had already caught it. The goal was always to catch the ball. But this was Rickey. Rickey had to make it exciting for an America that will soon replace words with video. Television was on its way to ruling the country. People were watching, and those at the game had paid good money to see a show. So now it became a thing. Rickey would catch a routine fly, a can, old Karen, or as soon as the ball was wrestled, circulating the webbing of his glove, bam, he snatched it. It became Rickey's signature. The Little League and high school coaches around the country went insane because now the kids wanting a piece of Rickey's cool were incorporating the snatch catch into their game. Rickey and DiMaggio overlapped, not just geographically, but also historically. They were both from the Bay. DiMaggio grew up in the North Beach section of San Francisco. When the A's moved west from Kansas City and DiMaggio was a coach for the A's during their first 2 seasons, 1968 and 1969, Rickey was just a kid, a 10-year-old carrying a football around a couple of miles away from the Coliseum, stealing base for a quarter of swipe. DiMaggio made his big league debut as a 21-year-old in Sergei in 1936 and retired in 1951, 4 years before the Yankees made Elston Howard the first black player to wear the pinstripes. Rickey arrived in the big leagues as a 20-year-old at the Philadelphia A's of DiMaggio's day. He already moved twice from Philadelphia to Kansas City, then from Kansas City to Oakland. Billy played 2 seasons with Joe D. Rickey played for Billy for 3. Grace versus Flash. They were worlds apart generationally, and on its face, outside of both growing up in the Bay. There was really no reason to link the two, except for one important commonality: statesman or showman, snatch catcher or two-hander, Italian or black. Rickey and Joe both found out early about the hard business side of baseball. The game was never going to pay them what they were worth. Respect was not paid in words but in dollars. And whether in pre-World War II baseball or 1980s baseball, players had to scratch and claw and hold out and dominate just to get their share. Even if in Rickey's time, the player's share in one season was bigger than what DiMaggio earned over his entire storied career. The great DiMaggio, who never made a mistake, according to legend, was called the perfect baseball player so many times that might as well have been his middle name. Always felt like he had to fight to get his money. DiMaggio had even held out way back in 1937. And now Rickey, who arrived in the big leagues nearly half a century after Joe, was about to go the same route. Chapter 8. It's my final chapter. Skip around as always. Gonna read everything. This is cool. That's some important stuff to read. Chapter 8. Let's get into it. Baseball players weren't regular guys, but in 1974 they earned only slightly more than 3 times what the average American family paying to watch them play brought home. That year, the same year Rickey turned 16, the median household income in the United States was $11,000. The average major league salary was $35,000. Hank Aaron was in the final year of a 3-year, $600,000 contract that his signing had made him the highest paid player in the history of the game at $200,000 per season. A year earlier, Willie Mays retired. Mays ended his spectacular 22-year career, never making more than $180,000 a year. They were always the outliers, a few players who dwarfed what the average American worker brought home, like Babe Ruth, who earned $80,000 a year during the Great Depression years of 1930 and 1931. The outliers were the Mount Olympus guys. Guys like Aaron, Mays, DiMaggio, and Williams were the best to ever play baseball, who made their biggest money near or at the very end of their career. Even though the players were the game, they didn't share in the profits. The public was rarely sympathetic, however, because most fans would kill to be able to just once hit a ball the way Reggie did at Tiger Stadium when he took Doc Ellis off the transformer at the 1971 All-Star Game, or to hear the crowd gasp for them the way it did for Rickey when his fingers swaggled, his legs gave that Predator's twitch, and bam, he was gone. The players got the fame, the girls, the cheers, and the whole world chanted their names. To the average Joe, An anonymous cop working his miserable cubicle every day, Lee had to beg just to get a lousy 25 buck a week wage. Adulation was compensation enough. To the public, no matter what the salary, the players were always the lucky ones. When raised Marvin Miller every time this position was reinforced, the multi-million-dollar business of baseball was referred to as a kid's game. Worse, every time the players themselves sank into the sugary of the game bullcrap and told the world they loved baseball so much they would have played for free. By opening day 1984, Rickey was 25. The average American household income had increased 2.5 times to 26,430, but the average big league salary was now 12 times higher at 329,000. The players had fought and won their freedom from the reserve clause that had bound them to one team for life, and with free agency, the dreaded free agency that even the players were brainwashed into believing would kill the game if realized. Okay, real money. There's real money over free market. Self-made, you're worth whatever someone's willing to pay you kind of market now was now theirs. It's kind of capitalism, which Americans always said they swore. And they did swear by it until they saw just what these suits were willing to pay professional athletes to play a kid's game. But when he worked for the Major League Baseball Players Association under Miller, Dick Moss feared the change of perception of the athlete. He was right. As money grew, so did the resentment. Moss feared that the more players earned, the less human they would become to the public. As they earned more money, players were expected by fans to be perfect. And even the coaches and peers who should have known that had played or coached in the game and knew firsthand just how difficult it actually was, developed the same expectations. That kind of money, guys should be hitting 600 every season, even though that wasn't how any of it worked. And that kind of money, guys should be hitting 600 every season, even though they wasn't how any of it worked. Whether a player's annual salary was 100,000, 1 million, or 40 million, the basic arithmetic of the game was unchanged. The very best players in the game were going to get a hit 30% of the time. The very best teams, whether their player was 10 million, 50 million, 350 million, were going to win between 95 and 105 games. Teams had been playing baseball since the 1870s, when 6 teams in history had ever won 110 or more games in a season. It was the nature of the sport. No amount of free agent money or pennant buying owners could ever change that arithmetic. It had always been about the money, never so much as during Rickey's time. Cyrus had broken the sound barrier of comprehension. The public was still bitter toward players after the strike, so embracing the rising value of their teams. The owners plotted revenge. The public said it did not care who was at fault, yet always found a way to blame the players, remaining both angry and incredulous about each new record-breaking contract. It wasn't who was making that money, it was the money itself. The fans were fascinated by money. They loved the celebrity, Roy, as we call it. But now Casey doesn't just strike out. There's no joy in Mudville. It's you struck out, you're a blank. The rising salaries were so sharp and so public in the real world, the woman down the hall may have expected how much more her male co-workers earned. But in sports, everybody knew. Near the end of the spring training, the Associated Press, Sporting News, and later USA Today will print out the team payrolls and individual salaries of every player. This information fascinated and enraged the fans who now felt the unfairness of the capitalism they so deeply embraced, especially as they saw their own wages decline, failing to keep up, or worse, when their unions couldn't protect them, the layoffs were announced. The public also wanted the players to compare their salaries not to each other's, but to what fans made. The A's offered Rickey $950,000 for the 1984 season. Rickey wanted $1.2 million. From his first contract 5 years earlier, Rickey's salary had risen from more than 5,300%. At $1.2 million, the percentage increased from what when he entered the league would have been more than 6,700%. From the very beginning of his baseball arc, when Tommy Wilson had to bribe him the quarter for every base he stole just to get him to step onto the field, the percentage increase was an earning from playing baseball was 480 million%. In later years, the public was confounded by squabbles, which not astronomical dollar figures. The player response would turn into the cliche. It's not about the money, they would say. The fans would roll their eyes and vow never to watch baseball again just before getting sucked into another pennant race. In raw numbers, the 250,000 between the A's offer and what Rickey wanted was not an intractable defining amount, but to Rickey, the symbolism of the difference was confidence. The $1 million plateau held enormous value to him. It was what the superstars made. To be offered $950,000 by Alderson and Eisenhart, this a $50,000 show that mark was to him a way of saying that he was an exciting ball player, excellent ball player, but not quite a $1 million player, top shelf ball player. Not quite a star. The A's seemed to be saying he was in the class of Jim Rice and Mike Smith, or that sensation Fernando Venezuela, who a year earlier became the first player to receive a $1 million award in arbitration from the Dodgers, beating Rickey's earlier record for the most money earned in arbitration. To Rickey, what his employees were saying that it was that these other players were in a different class, better class than him. So I was as much a part of baseball knowledge as anything. It's such a value, it validates you. Players thinking, pay me whatever you want, as long as it's more than that guy. Money used to be metaphorical. Live only in the excited dreams of scouts. This guy has $1 million arm. That guy has $1 million talent. Now money real is literal. When Rickey enters the big leagues in 1979, the Angels made Nolan Ryan the first $1 million a year player. Next winter, Dave Winfield signed with the Yankees for 10 years and $23 million. Cal Ripken Jr., fresh off of winning the World Series, starting on his third full season, signed for 4 years and $4 million for 1984. Mike Smith, the Phillies' slugging third baseman, earned $1.9 million a year. Some players try to avoid the wrath of the public by adopting their all shucks. Nobody's worth that kind of money posture. Sleeping pitcher Lynn Barker did when he signed a contract that didn't even reach $1 million per. $1 million a year was the new benchmark. It was what the players made, and Rickey believed that he was going with them. Publicly, Rickey's and the A's both said that they were working on a long-term contract that would keep him in Oakland. But Eisenhart and Eidelson both knew that wasn't going to happen. Barbie Chase of the New York Times reported that Rickey in 1983 had turned down a 7-year contract worth $10 million and $12 million. But neither Eisenhart nor Alderson recalled making such a bountiful offer. It was unlikely that the A's would have been extravagant, and as if they had been, given the importance that Rickey placed on earning $1 million a year, it is unlikely that he would turn it down. He led the league in steals for the 4th straight season, which he was remarkable considering he'd only been in the league for 4 years. Rickey stole 22 defensive bases in 1983, never really threatened the record, but he still stole 108 bases. 4 full years in the big leagues, 300 steals seasons. No one in the history of the league had ever done that. Not Cobb, not Brock, not Wills. And the 1 year Rickey didn't steal 100 was the shortened 1981 season, when the strike wiped out 53 games. When he broke the record, he did that boom or bust value. 130 steals. His 108 steals were more than a team's totals for half the teams in the American League. Tim Raines, his supposed National League counterpart, had been in the league 3 full years and had led the league in each year, but he never stole 100. He never would. Rickey also owned a single-season steals record. He led the 1983 team and still runs, walks, base percentage, steals, hits, doubles, triples, and total bases. As him Pat play went, Rickey saw himself as the ultimate leadoff engine, the guy who could lead off a game, score a run without even getting a hit. Like Smith might hit 40 runs a year, but was he really 1.1 million more valuable than Rickey? Even though the game compared him to Raines, Rickey didn't view himself in direct competition with any one player. He was in direct competition with everyone. Spring training neared, there would be no compromise contract figure between him and the A's. And for the second time in 3 years, Rickey and the A's, ostensibly on the same team, would again be adversaries in arbitration, where Rickey saw the numbers speaking for themselves, decided would be decided in the conference room. Let's get around a little bit. This is a very long chapter. Rickey's team pointed out that he walked the league leading 103 times. The 60 points better than third baseman Tony Lansford. Next highest A's regular when Oakland acquired from the Red Sox when they shipped 20 arms to Boston. He was the only player on the team with a 400 on base percentage, which was second in the league behind Boston's hit machine Wade Boggs. All that was also true. All since agreed, but Rickey didn't hit enough home runs. These people point out that Rickey broke the all-time single-season record for stolen bases the year before. 1983 still stole another 100 bases at a higher percentage, 108 out of 127. Rickey stole 105 bases. The team responded. Next closest teammate was David Lopes at 65. 105 runs scored by Rickey was fourth best in the American League on a team that finished 10th out of 14 teams in runs scored. When the convincing was complete, the A's convinced better. Austin guys win. Rickey would make $150,000 for 1984. He was furious. Part of guys like Dave Winfield and Mike Smith were getting the big money, and leadoff guys were way down the scale, as Rickey would call them, off base. The big guys were knocking in 100 runs, but I was scoring 100 runs. Isn't that the same thing? Not according to the A's case in arbitration, not according to the arbitrator. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's get around. Rickey was different. Arbitration was about respect. Every year he'd been in the big leagues, he felt he had to fight for his money. When he reports Arizona spring training in 1984, one message repeated in his mind. His own club was telling him he wasn't elite. He wasn't Jim Rice. He wasn't Mike Smith. He wasn't Cal Ripken Jr. Rickey carried a list of grievances. First, there was a losing arbitration. Then there were the writers. Then there was the new manager. Steve Spurrier announced a new rule on the team: when players need a day off, they were now required to come direct to him instead of one of the coaches. Unlike Carlton, Jim Rice, Eddie Murray, and his new teammate for 1984, universally known as a bastard Dave Kingman, Rickey did not have a reputation for being hostile. He cultivated the writers, taking them into his confidence, to treat them like an integral part of the universal universe. No matter how many hours they spent on the field, in the clubhouse, or on the road, they were outsiders. It was not an uncommon position for a player to take. The players also, at some point, found some middle ground with reporters. Rickey did not. Ran a little bit. All which means why Rickey started the 1984 season out of blood. Ellison said that he wasn't hitting the ball out of the ballpark, and so Rickey led the A's in home runs during the spring training. Opening night, April 3rd, at the Coliseum against Milwaukee, the A's were trailing 3-0 in the bottom of the sixth against Don Sutton, the same Don Sutton who was in the Dodgers, starting the chase with Sandy Koufax when they won the next six National League pennant. And Rickey was in the third grade, the same Sutton who would average 14 wins in a year for a quarter century, like a Toyota with 300,000 miles on it. Take 324 spectacular career wins to the Hall of Fame. It was against that Sutton that Rickey started a rally with the A's, first home run of the season. Sutton wouldn't last the inning, but Rickey wasn't done. He capped off a four-run rally in the ninth to win at 6-5 while singling off Raleigh's fingers and scoring a winning run when second baseman Jim Gander chucked a double play rally wide to the end of the game. Rickey saw it all differently. When Gavin's weekly column appeared in the April 23rd Sporting News, it read like Rickey and Alderson trading post-game notes, not about the Red Sox, but about that time in arbitration when Rickey won at $1.2 million. a year, and Sandy beat him at the bargaining table and he had to sell for $950,000. His common gamblers also repeated the whispers about Rickey unattributed. Of course, he had an outstanding season in 1983. But the second half of the season, he began sitting out day games after night games. Started asking out in the seventh inning of games. He skipped batting practice often, and teammates became critical of his attitude. As a player nears free agency, there was the type of cold words that could stick. In case where I was complaining about money, was over with his own stats. Doesn't follow along with the other guys, picking out of games. The implication was that Rickey was difficult, selfish, the worst adjective of them all, unprofessional. The whispers were not always backed up by statistics, but anecdotal evidence and optics of Rickey setting himself apart created a powerful, tactile narrative. The second half of the 1983 season, Rickey played 76 of 81 games, starting 67 of them. He played 9 innings in 94% of them, in 63 of the 67 games. He came out of the game in the seventh on August 13th against Minnesota, his first game coming back from injury, again on August 19th. On September 5th, Burroughs removed half his starters, while the A's were getting crushed 11-1 by the White Sox. In Toronto on September 11th, Rickey came out of the game. The A's were getting pounded 14-6. This book talks about obviously Rickey and Raines. They were two of the best leadoff men in baseball in the early part of the 80s. Rickey respected Raines. He was impressed with Raines' power, but they had similar base stealing styles. For someone who was a natural left-hander, Rickey appreciated that Raines was a switch hitter. They split the covers of magazines. They were built similar. Two football players dominating baseball. Right, the team, 1814, finished with 7 wins, 7 games behind the Royals, locking Jim Palmer into retirement. Never reached 500 again for the rest of the season. Also in this chapter, it features also 84 seems to be the last for Rickey, because he got traded on December 6, 1984. The blockbuster 5-for-1 deal was done. The A's traded Rickey to the Yankees for Jose Rio, Stan Javier, Eric Plunk, Tim Burgess, and Jay Howell. The A's also threw in pitcher Burt Riley as a player to be named later. So Rickey was now a Yankee. The two sides hammered on the contract deals. And by the time Rod left the Hyatt Regency, Rickey was officially in the million-a-year club. He had signed a long-term deal at 5 years, $8.6 million with a no-trade clause. He would switch back to his original position to play in the most famous, most expensive center field in baseball, once run by Mantle and DiMaggio, while leaving behind all direct links with the city of Oakland for the first time since Bobby took the family out of Arkansas. Rickey's signature on his Yankee contract, 2 L's were ended. He was beginning his second act as a big leaguer. The original Charlie Finley's A's faded further into history. As Rickey prepared for New York, the element of the trade was added to the legend. Was it really true that Alderson made the biggest deal of his career by selecting the players he received for Rickey out of a magazine? It was true. As Alderson went to Houston for the winter meetings without a deal. The Dodgers and Texas now are expressing interest. The Rangers wouldn't give him what he wanted. A combination of infielder Jim Kunkel and his choice of either Dunley, Darwin, or what would have been a true Oakland moment, the other Rangers pitcher Dave Stewart. Texas was being especially stingy on Kunkel, who had been the number 3 overall pick in the 1983 draft. Nelson focused instead on the Yankees at the meetings, but as the time to tell them what he wanted in exchange for Rickey drew near, he had a major problem. He didn't trust his own people. So Allison looked at the Yankees' top prospects, as listed by Baseball America, a fledgling magazine that ranked the Yankees' top farm prospects for 1985. Jose Rio, Stan Javier, Tim Brooks, Keith Smith, Eric Plunk, Dan Pasqua, Jim DeShays, Rex Hudler, Orestes Destrada, and Al Leiter. The most interesting part of the deal from my standpoint was that I didn't really have a lot of confidence in our scouting department at the time. There was this new publication that had just come out called Baseball America. Most people in baseball thought it was a rag, that there was a lot of information in it that was just like, nobody would give them good information. That was all misinformation. They printed these top 10 lists, top 10 prospects in this league, top 10 prospects in this organization, what you have, what have you. So we went to the Yankees. I just asked for the top 5 prospects in the organization according to Baseball America. We ended up getting 5 guys for Rickey. I don't know if we got the 1 to 5, but all 5 were their top prospects. Four of the 5 ended up being really good players. Right, so that's it, man. I'm done with chapter 7 and 8. Be chapter 9 tomorrow. That'll be it, man. That's it. Looking forward to chapter 9. You one chapter at a time. Keep moving. Chapter 9 be on the dock tomorrow. So that's it, man. The first live feed of the new year is over with. I thank those who tuned in today. The likes, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Be back tomorrow. Continue on this journey. It's a new year, so it's going to be a lot of live feeds done this year. Get these subscriptions up and keep moving. So that's it, man. That's it for today. Thanks for those who tuned in to the Life of the Spirit Study Bible. Read from Ecclesiastes. Finished that whole book. Being songs tomorrow. And I kept reading from the book about Rickey Henderson, chapter 7 and 8. In chapter 9 tomorrow, Rickey, The Life and Legend of American Original, Rickey Henderson book. So that's it for today. Happy New Year for those who tuned in. Appreciate it. Be back tomorrow. Till then, talk to you.